So this happened back in 2000, and I was in middle school back then. I was in 6th grade. Back then, on the weekends and during the breaks, I used to go to work with my dad. Back then he was a bricklayer, so he would work with bricks and build houses and whatever. So I went to work with him in the morning, and this was like in the woods. It was in Edmond, Oklahoma. It was around 6 in the morning. It was a normal day working, and the guys talking with each other, and it was a pretty boring day. And then towards the evening, the mood of the place just changed. Like, it was like this really dark, a really heavy feeling in the air. And it was me, my dad, and his coworker left. And they were working, talking, and I was helping my dad with the bricks, cutting the bricks and throwing them up to him because he was on a scaffold and he was building a chimney back then. It was up and it was really heavily wooded, and it was the only house within miles. There was no neighbors, there was nothing. It was just that one house in the middle of nowhere. And it was still under construction, so it didn't have any running water, any running electricity, nothing. The only light that we had was the light from the generator. And then once the clock hit 9 p.m., like, all the critters in the woods just stopped making noises. Like, the woods became really silent. There was no wind. There was nothing. And there was this smell of something that I can describe as rotting meat. Like, something had died and it was out in the sun for a long time, and the smell was just really heavy. I didn't think anything of it. Okay, an animal died, whatever. And then I heard like these noises of an animal that I couldn't figure out what it was. It sounded like a deer, but it didn't sound like a deer at the same time. And I looked up to my dad, and I was like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard it." And he's like, "It's just an animal, in the woods at night." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And then an hour passed, and pebbles being thrown at the windows. My first reaction was like, okay, it's my dad. He's hitting the brake with his little shovel that he has, where he hits the brakes and the little rocks fly off the brake and they're hitting the window. I'm like, okay, whatever. And in the room, there was no light. It was just a light that was powered by a generator, and it was pointing towards the chimney that he was building. And then all of a sudden, something yelled my dad's name. It was, "Jose!" And I froze and I looked towards my dad, and he froze too. He was like, "What was that?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Go check. Maybe it's my boss or something. Go check." I'm like, "Oh man, okay." So I go check, and I come back, and no, there's no one there. I was like, okay, maybe it was one of the neighbors and they were yelling for somebody else. I'm like, "Dad, there's no neighbors for miles. There's no houses in the surrounding area for miles." He's like, it was, I don't know, just don't think about it, whatever. I'm like, okay. But when they said my dad's name, the goosebumps, I still remember the goosebumps. Like, the back of my neck, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My arms felt tingly, and I felt fear, to be honest. I wasn't like, it's hard to describe what I was feeling, but it was mostly fear. Like, I got paralyzed in fear. who or what screams out my dad's name. So we just ignored it. We were on the lookout just in case there was somebody roaming around the area or whatever. Then an hour passed, and they yelled my dad's name again. They're like, Jose! And I'm like, Dad, there's something out there and it's calling your name. So he gets down and his face was pale. Like, we're dark skinned because we're Hispanic, but his face was pale. And he's like, just stay here while I go check out the woods and see what I can find. And so he goes and he leaves his coworker with me. And I asked the coworker, did you hear that? Or was it just me? He's like, no, I heard it. And then he starts praying to the Virgin Mary. I'm like, okay, once they start doing that, it's just getting serious. Like, that's serious when somebody starts praying. I'm like, okay. So my dad comes back, and there's no one around here. We just need to pack it up for the night and just get back to the cars. Yeah, good idea. So we start packing up the tools and the bags to put them in the truck. And the smell of rotting meat grew stronger and stronger throughout the night. It was a really strong smell. I would walk past my dad and it would just engulf us. Like, the smell engulfed us. We smelled like rotting meat. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? And I'm like, okay, Dad, we need to hurry this up. I don't want to be here any longer. He's like, oh no, I'm trying. Let me just finish this real quick. I'm like, okay. So 30 minutes after the last time that my dad's name was called, we go back to my dad starts up the truck and he's asking his coworker if he put everything up. I'm like, yeah, I put everything up, whatever. When he turns the truck on, the headlights come on, and in the distance, we saw what was like a silhouette of a man, but it was like at least 7 feet tall. And you could see that it was a man, but its body was disfigured. I don't know how to describe it. It looked like a man, but it wasn't. And these glowing, like, yellowish, reddish eyes. And I'm like, Dad, look. We all screamed. My dad, I've never heard my dad scream like a girl before. And he screamed. Him and his coworker started praying. I'm like, Dad, don't pray. Just hit the gas and let's go. And as we were leaving, like, you could see the shadow was checking us out. You could see him lean over and see if we were gone. All three of us heard my dad's name, Jose, really clearly in the woods. And it wasn't like a clear voice. It was like raspy, like they were forcing themselves to say my dad's name. Not once, but twice. And that's the creepy thing, like twice. When we left, I was in tears. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. I just wanted to go home and just never think of that again. My dad never went back to finish the site. He had to call somebody else and like, hey, we need you to finish this for us. And I never went back either because, it was the woods, and that was my first time being in the woods. And to this day, I can't go anywhere near the woods or a place that has lots of trees because of that. But that event stuck with me. Up until now, and I've always tried to do research what I saw. When TikTok came around, I saw all these videos of people having similar experiences as us, And that's when we found out that what it was a skinwalker. And like I mentioned before, we live in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma used to be Native American land. And so it's not surprising that we saw a skinwalker. Like I said, I did some research and I found out that a skinwalker is a Native American who practices magic or whatever and can transform into an animal, and it's just crazy. And it's something that I can never forget. I don't know. It's haunted me. It's haunted me. It really affected me by not going anywhere near the woods. I can't do camping. I can't do any of that. I have to stay in a secure building at all times. I close my windows. I lock them. Lock my doors. I close the windows. I just can't be outside at night anymore.
Stories of skinwalkers, as Angel has mentioned, are believed to come from Navajo culture and are people, witches, who have the ability to turn into or pretend to be an animal. When we think of witches, we might assume that we're referring to healers or medicine men, but skinwalkers are told to be completely on the other side. Witches that are evil and using magic that goes against the good works from traditional healers. The entire topic is shrouded in mystery outside of the Navajo culture, but intriguing nonetheless.
I found stories of people that experience similar things. So the rotting smell, that's a big giveaway. Calling people's names to lure them into the woods, that was another one. The silhouette of a tall person, that was the other one. So those three fit exactly into the category of a skinwalker. So I'm 100% confident that it was a skinwalker. It couldn't have been anything else. There's nothing natural that lives in the woods that looks like that and smells like that and can mimic the voice of a human. Because it sounded human, but it sounded like it was forcing itself to speak. When we saw the silhouette was when we got into the truck to go home. When my dad turned the truck on, the lights automatically turned on with the truck. And the truck was parked in a way where it was the light pointed towards the woods, basically. And when he turned the truck on, very far in the distance, you could see that silhouette, that 7-foot tall silhouette, and it was hiding behind the trees. And the reason I know it was really tall was because the eyes were higher than any of us. So that's how I know it was tall. My dad's 6 foot, and it was taller than him. Our family has attracted the paranormal. Why? Because my great-granddad dealt with what they call it in Mexico, brujeria. And my dad's dad also did brujeria. He dealt with that. So throughout our generation, like, we attract the paranormal. My dad is always seeing things. There's always apparitions appearing to him. There's always noises in the houses. Anywhere we go, anywhere we move, there's always noises in the house. So yeah, I did believe in the paranormal back then. But that was the first experience that I've lived that was paranormal. Not the first, but that was like the first physical experience I've lived. I've had other paranormal experiences. Like when I was little, I had an imaginary friend, and it said it wanted to kill my family, and one day it just went away, and I never saw him again. I was about, I want to say, 7 years old, and it was a kid. It was an imaginary kid, but I guess it wasn't imaginary because I could see him, and he said he wanted to kill my parents. But I think it was the house that we lived in that had all that paranormal stuff going on. Because I think, what was it, last year I did some research into the place that we used to live where I saw my imaginary friend, and we believe it was, the house was built like on an Indian burial site. And I found out that two people had died in that house. So there was a lot of energy in that house to begin with. Last year I worked for the census, and they gave us access to all these websites that we could go to and look up who lives in what house and whatever. So that's how I was able to do research on the house that we used to live in. The house that we currently live in, next door is an abandoned house, and nature has retaken the lot, and there's a bunch of trees just growing from inside the house, and like at night, it's just really creepy. You can hear like noises and like I don't know, it's creepy. That's why I don't go out. There's trees growing from inside the house, and it's a creepy looking house, and that's why I don't go out at night because of the skinwalker experience. So I don't go near that. We're Hispanic, and our family in Mexico, they used to practice brujeria, so a lot of things have happened to us. And
Hey, see you in the next story.